People who are falsely accused of sexual abuse. How did the accuse impact your life? I was accused of debauchery right at the end of college. It was a very public event. Shockwaves were sent through my hometown and headlines reached national newspapers. My name was never printed or anything, but of course people talk. As you can imagine, it's a pretty terrible experience. It was just chaos, incredible amounts of anxiety, stress and trauma, and so I was scared to death my friends, family, or anyone at all would actually believe I violated this girl. I had no idea how to act, and mostly I was so traumatized I didn't really function too well socially. I was so broken down psychologically, and would freak out over whether or not people would actually think I violated this girl or not. I would obsess over who wished me happy birthday and not, and try to map out if they were doing it to be nice, what the opinions of their social circle was likely to be, and I would pay attention to who deleted me on Facebook. The first year was the worst, as I moved to a new city and isolated myself. I wish people reached out more, as I never did to anyone myself. But I think most of my friends were young and in general people were kind of shocked by the whole thing. It brings me to tears just thinking about my old friends, and I still struggle to forgive my family for not supporting me better. This is now 7 years ago. The whole situation is just a death spiral to be honest. Nobody wins. A year after the accusation, the girl sent me a message saying she knew it was wrong. She made a mistake. She was in a horrible life situation and that she was sorry. My case was dropped after a while of course. It's funny because I could tell a real difference in how my family acted towards me after that. But well, I was too traumatized and I just tend to withdraw, which I have done more and more for the last 7 years lol. You won't believe how much I wished to just turn back the time so I could get my life back. Sadly this is reality. It's definitely sad how a victim who makes a false story can get away by simply saying sorry, yet the one who was accused who did nothing wrong gets scarred for the rest of their life. Someone I knew on the internet claimed I had child pornography on my computer and was using nude photos of myself to lure young boys. 2 women that belonged to some organization that investigates claims of child P came to my house and searched my computer and my devices. They didn't find anything. 2 women that belonged to some organization that investigates claims of child P came to my house and searched my computer and my devices. They didn't find anything. I wouldn't have let them in, personally. I met a woman once whose husband was a very good looking man but also very nervous. She explained to me that he had just gotten out of prison after almost 10 years because a woman finally came clean and admitted she falsely accused him to teach him a lesson. Part of why he was so nervous is that the state of technology had changed so much that he was constantly amazed by everything he was seeing. We were in an electronics store at the time. Man lost a large chunk of his life due to false accusations. They're serious. Sister accused a guy of debauchery. Don't know the circumstances, but she was an attention seeker and drama queen and had bad temper. The guy she accused was friend of her boyfriend. If I recall correctly, he wasn't his best friend, but a guy in his circle of friends. Incident was in the girl looking for rebound, but cried debauchery when he stood her off trope. It happened in a small college town. News spread fast. He was kicked out of college and was ostracized. However, her story kept changing and it was obvious that she was lying. Eventually she told the truth and apologized, but damage was done for him, and he left and wasn't heard from again. His name is common, so googling wasn't helpful. Personally, it scared me. She made up things before, but debauchery was another level for her. Fast forward 10 years. Family disowned me when I ruined her wedding by telling her fiancé about it. Good for you. I'm glad you told her fiancé. I can't stand people who make things up for attention at the expense of someone else's life. Currently in the middle of it. Had a kid 10 years into a relationship with my GF. She started to go crazy after the birth, perhaps developing several personality disorders. Started accusing me of physically shaming our daughter, debauchery, domestic violence etc. as a control tactic. I stayed for 3 years trying to tame the beast. Still loved her dearly. I thought this was just some hormonal thing that would pass. I left after she accused my dad of molesting our daughter. She claimed full custody and only allows minimal supervised visitation. Her whole family and half of our mutual friends are convinced that me and my family are abusers. I'm currently fighting for full custody. Lost my house, dog, business, partner, child, friends and stuff. Still have my health, sanity, family and job. Going to be a heck of a fight. Wish me luck, Reddit. I wish you luck and hope you won't need it. Friend of mine, British guy who had been in the US since he was about 9, was accused by a child at the daycare he worked at. He was about 23 at the time. In college, it was a good paying gig and his mom had worked there for a decade. He absolutely loved it. He was an artist and sometimes drew pics of the kids at play and gave them to the parents at the end of the day. One girl, maybe 6-7, fairly new to the area, told to her mother he drew other pics too, of kids dead and doing strange things to each other and to adults. Bam. Of course, he's in the police precinct and suspended from work. Multiple aggressive interrogations. He's being followed. His home is searched. They find nothing. Only after he had been through all that did the mother tell the cops the little girl had made similar accusations at another daycare in another town, with no evidence found. In the end he was exonerated, never charged, but it killed his love for the job. People didn't look at him the same. The parents asked him not to draw the kids anymore. He quit soon after, and soon after that moved back to Britain even though his entire close family still lives in America. It's been 20 years now and he's got a great life. Constable, wife and 3 happy kids, but I often wonder how his life, and by association mine, this man is like a brother to me, would be different if that girl hadn't made that accusation. He was going to school to be an English professor. Also, WTF was going on in that poor kid's life? I lost all my friends. She even recanted a couple days later saying that I hadn't violated her, but I was still out of the group. Yep, same thing happened to me. Funny how your friends disappear. A small part of me is glad I now know they were all more drinking buddies and friends. Not physical abuse, but I was accused of gender-based harassment by a neighbor over the phone. Cops called my parents saying they traced a phone call to my house where a young male verbally harassed of a carnal nature a mom that lived down the street. This was the 80s. I'm surprised they told my parents who the victim was, but they did. So I claim innocence because I didn't do it. They believed me, but I was really upset because there was probably lingering doubt. I kept thinking about it and it turns out the day and time it happened I had the perfect alibi. I was at the movies with my dad seeing No Escape starring Ray Liotta. I don't know if it ever got back to the neighbor. She probably still thinks it is me. Want to know the crazy part? It was her son. He came over and hung out with my sister and he called his mom from our phone. From that point on we avoided them. Didn't want any more drama. Eat crap, Brian. You're a terrible person. I'm also convinced he stole my Nintendo and all of its games. Not 80s. Mid-90s. Whenever No Escape came out. This past school year I was accused of it by a, now old, friend's girlfriend. The entire friend group believed her and left me behind. Had to go through a 3-month-long process of telling our sides of the stories, turning in evidence, and eventually going to a hearing board. The board unanimously decided on me not being guilty. I was asked to leave student organizations I was in because people heard the rumor. Most people on campus don't look at me or talk to me anymore, and there's just been a lot of emotional mental stress. The hearing ended around 6 months ago, but I still feel the effects as I don't want to really be a social. Don't have much motivation, and I'm legitimately terrified of going back to school. I still have a few good friends who stuck by and my family has been super supportive and always believed me, but I would be lying if I said it hasn't messed with how I perceive myself, how often I want to be in public, and my overall happiness. I was accused of debauchery by my best friend GF, who came to visit me at university after she had an argument with him. She tried to sleep with me. I refused. She went back to our hometown and told everyone I'd violate her. I was threatened with violence on multiple occasions. Many of my friends stopped talking to me. I was verbally abused and called a debaucher on many occasions. All this even though I was never even arrested. I was very lucky. This happened before the rise of social media, or I would probably have been unable to finish university and certainly wouldn't have a career. It sticks like glue. There are still people in my hometown years later who openly say I'm a rapist because everyone knows most debauchers get away with it. How does that person sleep at night knowing that you ruined your reputation? So sorry to hear you going through this. I hope you get justice for what she has done to you. The hard thing about physical assault allegations is, even if you are 100% innocent and it's confirmed, the possibility will always be in the back of people's minds. It's a natural bias humans have. When I was 23, I was working as the director of a summer camp and youth programming for a large organization. I hired teenagers as staff for the summer and worked with the same teens, 15-17-year-olds, during the year with their youth programs. Knowing I was a young man working with mostly girls, I was aware, and I never, ever met with anyone alone. My office door was always open, at all times. I was engaged, life was good. One day I show up to work and there was a cop, a father, and my boss and his boss all waiting for me. They bring me into a closed office and tell me Mary, name made up, told some of her friends that her and I had fricked in a closet. I sat there in utter shock and said, "Is this a joke?" After a moment I realized it wasn't. So, I said, "That accusation is 100% false. I would never do anything of the sort." I was then told that I would be on paid leave. I protested and said, "If you do this, everyone will think it's true." They did. This was on a Thursday. I met with a lawyer and was getting ready to sue the organization and the family of the girl. Friday morning I get a call. Mary confessed she made the entire thing up and she wanted to meet to apologize. Too late. The damage was done. No one looked at me the same. There was always that tiny nugget of doubt. Worst part, my fiancée at the time also had a problem. She never said it, but I could tell she felt there must have been something inappropriate with the way I was or something. We broke up. Wedding called off. My only saving grace was this was before social media. Thank God. I could send them a scathing letter, but word traveled fast and I was no longer hireable within the greater organization. I moved to a different city. This was 20 years ago. It really bothers me. To this day I still get really upset wondering how much different my life would have been if this girl didn't make up a lie and if she hadn't told the truth so quickly. In the end, it always comes down to one person's word versus another, but it seems society is always skewed to guilty until proven innocent, and then even then, not really innocent. There should be a much harsher penalty for false accusations. I was on OkCupid for a while, and one night, I was talking to this woman. It was a profile for a woman, but I don't know or think it actually was a woman after what happened, and she was into cyberfricking. I figured it's late, and I've got nothing better to do, so we connected on Skype. She's got video, and she's pretty attractive, so I'm good to go, and she keeps asking me to point the camera down so she can see what's going on. Like an idiot, I do, and after a few minutes, her video feed changes to my own, and it's from a few minutes earlier. Then it changes to my mother's Facebook page, then my alma mater's Facebook page, where I was teaching, then to my old boss's Facebook page, and then to my LinkedIn page. It keeps cycling through these different tabs, and the person starts typing messages to each of these places. Messages like, "My name tried to yell at me, and I'm really scared for my life," and a link to a YouTube video of my video feed from a few minutes earlier. The person says that if I don't go to her link and vote for her for some sort of contest that she'll start sending these messages, and that I'll probably kill myself, because she's going to ruin my life. I'm sitting there frantically googling what's happening and how to get out of it. My bank account was empty, so I couldn't give this person money, and I explained that, but I'm still terrified that these messages are going to go through. I close my LinkedIn account. I remove all contact information and business associations from Facebook, and notice that I've got all of the privacy settings set to the most extreme levels possible. So much for Facebook security. I report the Skype account and the OkCupid account. I even found someone on Reddit who went through an almost identical situation. While I'm doing all of this, I'm stalling for time with the person, because she's saying if I close out of the chat session, she'll post everything anyway. I tell her that I'm a bad mark, because I have no money in the first place. I even searched the link she gave me on a virtual machine with a VPN. but nothing comes up. Eventually, I think she gave up because the call ended, and I spent the rest of the night looking through all of my contacts' Facebook pages for any indication that the messages had gone through, but nothing did. I looked on YouTube to see if I could find the video of me, but that didn't come up either. It was freaking terrifying, but fortunately nothing came of it. The exact same crap happened to me. All my friends' social media popped up in the page. Video was uploaded to her private Facebook page. Nothing came up of it either. My story is pretty similar to you record. I used to babysit my godmother's kids, and one day at dinner, the little girl said something about me touching her butt, and then more details to follow. I was just sitting there with my mouth open the whole time, in shock. Cue lots of fighting and tension. My dad pulling me aside a little while later, asking me if I honestly didn't do it, etc. Turns out, her dad he was abusive and a woman beater. But him doing that was the last straw for my godmother. She took her kids and tried to leave town, and I never saw them again. Unfortunately, I'm 90% sure she ended up getting back together with him because he, somehow, won custody over the kids. I was in like 8th grade and it was a real fricked up situation. How it affected my life. I never saw those kids again and hope they're doing better now. In general, I don't really babysit anymore. It just makes me really wary. Kids are great and so freaking cool, but they can say a lot of random things that could really end up hurting you. Turns out, her dad was. So did this ever end up exonerating you? Well, I guess the theme of this thread is that the accusation does damage no matter what happens after it. Friend of a friend of mine lost his job at a school, lost his job at church, lost a lot of friends. Had to sell his cars and refinance their house to pay for a good lawyer when he was accused by a girl from his church group of having a relationship with her. He was a leader in the church and she was 15/16. He's happily married, had alibis for every occasion she said they met up. Judge found him not guilty and tore the girl apart after a few weeks of the trial. He can no longer work with kids or at a church, his main passion. The whole process, from accusations to not guilty, took around 3 years. They're still working their way out of financial debt from those years of him unable to work and legal fees. She has faced no punishment for false reporting as far as I know. My husband left his volunteering position helping teenage kids after that. Not worth the risk. It's great his wife didn't disown him too. Was accused of debauchery after I caught my ex-fiancée and her secret guy in bed together. She panicked and was afraid I'd go and tell everyone that she was cheating. So after we broke up, and after she falsely accused me of being a gun to campus, she filed debauchery charges against me. I was in college at the time. Trying to fight the charges and maintain grades was impossible. My GPA dropped from a 3.7 to a 1.8 that semester. Failed every class. Stopped eating. Stopped sleeping. Stopped taking care of myself because I was so worried that her lie was going to get me locked up for 20+ years. In the end, she dropped the charges midway through when her story started to get questioned as it had a lot of holes and things that didn't line up. She came clean and admitted to lying as well. Once it became apparent that she was lying, everyone acted like nothing had happened and that I was only playing victim about my college, grades, health, etc. I tried filing a lawsuit for lost $ and time regarding my grades and was seeking compensation for a year's worth of tuition. This started fall semester and ended early spring semester, and housing on campus. I was told that I didn't have a case and was then instructed that my best bet would have been to drop the charges and just move on. Still, to this day, I know I would have had a much higher GPA should it not have been for that one school year. The spring semester wasn't much better than the fall, a 2.6 GPA. Because of that, I blame that one year. For my final GPA of 2.8, I blame that low GPA on why I'm working grunt work in a company instead of working where I know I could have easily ended up with all my peers. That all being said, I have trust issues. This being in 2012. And I just recently, a couple months ago, started my first relationship with someone since then. I refuse to be alone with anyone if it can be avoided, and since then, I've been more closed off and direct with people. With the exception of my current girlfriend, I've really stopped caring about other people for the most part. What kills me the most is how people still look at me differently and still keep their distance from me, believing that I just won in court and that I did commit a crime and got away with it. It also bothers me how, aside from a few lost months, she was unaffected by it all and is loving a happy life married to the guy I caught her in bed with. I lost my GPA, scholarships, got placed on academic probation, and it's to blame for where I am now. Even though I wasn't placed in prison, it still screwed a vast portion of my life up. I will forever be a proponent for giving a penalty to a woman who falsely accuses a man of debauchery equal to what that man would have received. No person should ever be allowed to falsely accuse and walk free. The only thing I could suggest about the low GPA is to go back and get a degree at a different name college and use that to override your old GPA, or even go into a different field. If this bad GPA is going to significantly hold you back, it is worth the waste of time to do so. A friend threw a party back in his early 20s where a girl ended up fricking one of the guys at a party. After about a week, the girl ended up regretting her decision and decided it was a good idea to say that she was debauched by a bunch of the guys at the party, including my friend. It freaked my friend out quite a bit and doesn't like talking about it. Thankfully, the girl ended up retracting the whole debauchery thing. My friend is now in his mid-30s. A few months ago he wanted to go on a date with this girl he had been talking to on a dating website who he never met. I guess the girl was a bit apprehensive of going on a date with someone on the internet, and instead of going on a group date decided that she was going to do a background check on him online. For whatever reason, the debauchery accusation came up on the background check and she confronted him about it. He just hung up the phone and started crying. Now, my friend was trying to get a job in a mental institution where they do a background check and called and said he could not get the job because of the carnal accusation. Turns out, someone in the government dropped the ball and never removed the false accusation, especially that it's been about 15 years after the incident. He had to go to his lawyer and they had to talk to the FBI to get the record removed. The case was so old that no one would have had a record in the courts of this. Thankfully, the screw up was fixed and he ended up getting the job. He never went on a date or met up with that girl, but he says that he gets calls from her number every once in a while to which he does not pick up. I was accused recently in college. Police dropped charges a day after my interview with them, but the college ethics board found me guilty of violating Title IX. I won't speak in much detail about the incident, but briefly, she claims to have been blacked out drunk and doesn't remember anything. Witnesses who were with her all night claimed she didn't drink as much, she said. I didn't think she was drunk and knew it had been at least 4 hours since her last drink and she wasn't acting drunk. But her word against mine and the college board backed her. I definitely didn't force her. She was on top of me when it happened, so this is all about intoxication's effect on consent. The official sanctions against me are academic probation. My presence on campus is restricted to academics only, and I'm supposed to stay far away from her. Couple $1,000s on lawyers got me this instead of getting expelled, suspended. It was a 6-month-long process of investigation from the school. Honestly, I like to pretend that I'm fine, but since this is a throwaway I can say it all. I've experienced some serious depression since, had a couple stints of a borderline eating disorder, and my social life has suffered. Intramural sports were a huge part of my life and well-being, and I can't do those anymore. Professionally, I'm a hopeful pre-medical student, but it hurts knowing that there's a good chance my application will be rejected because of the mark on my disciplinary record. Every time that I've started to think about being in a romantic relationship again, it's horrible to decide when to have a conversation about it. I can't date someone without telling them. That just seems dishonest. All of my friends knew what I was going through during the investigation, and I lost probably 2-3 very close friends because of it. Sorry about poor organization. On mobile. Happened to my dad's friend. His stepdaughter accused him of molesting her to get her mother against him. It went all the way to trial and wasn't looking good for him. On the way out of the courthouse he popped 2 cyanide pills and it ended up killing him. So how did it impact him? It took his life. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.